See Family Records. Learn to find your family in the 1890 census. What can be found? Homes, names, veterans, relationships, race, gender, age, marriage, children, birthplace, immigration, employment, education, health, and farms. This 1890 census page is from Washington, D.C., page 722. It was taken June 6, 1890. The census was taken by John Hayward. This presentation will use different pages found in Washington, D.C., and one from Gaston, North Carolina. All were found on Ancestry.com. This is the only census that had the questions running down the left side of the pages. Most of the 1890 census was destroyed in a fire. We will study a few different pages that did survive. Name. Row 1, top row, Christian name in full, an initial of middle name. Bottom row, surname. On the top, we find the names of Jose, Marguerite, Mary, Mercedes, and Achilles. On the bottom is their last name, Sagrario. Each page is a different family. This family is found on page 611. Home. This census taker, John Hayward, in Washington, D.C., used a stamp on the side of the census page to show the location of Washington, D.C. and his name. The only thing he filled out in the top section was the street and number of the house. On this census page, Henry Jenkins filled out the top section, so we know this was in River Bend Township, Gaston, North Carolina, and it was taken on the 7th of June, 1890. He did not fill out the street name or number. The census form asks information about the home. The census taker, John Hayward, in Washington, D.C., only filled out the number of persons in the family. The next line down only shows 5 family members. Each page only had space for 5 people. The next 3 family members are on the next page. This family is found in Washington, D.C. on page 722. This is the home information from page 705. This was the 93rd family the census taker had visited. There was 1 family living in this house. There were 8 people living in the home. The census taker did not record the number of families visited. There were 8 people in this family. Sometimes there was someone other than a family member living in the home, so this number would then be different than C. Military, row 2. Whether a soldier, sailor, or Marine during the Civil War, U.S. or Confederate, or widow of such person. Charles H. Evans, found on page 722 in Washington, D.C., is listed as U.S. soldier and served 3 years. James G. Thompson, on page 719, was a U.S. soldier in the 71st New York Volunteers. In 1890, there is a veterans schedule. This schedule was not destroyed, so this covers all the states that did the census. We can learn a person's name and sometimes their wife's name, their rank, company, and dates of enlistment and discharge. Here is one example. Rachel is a widow of Corliss A. Hooker. She lives in Osceola, Michigan. Her husband was a private in Company B, the 5th Michigan Infantry. It then gives the enlistment date, discharge date, and time of service. Relationship. Row 3, relationship to the head of household. Page 611 in Washington, D.C. has Jose as head, Marguerite as wife, Mary and Mercedes as daughters, and Achilles as son. Other relationships might be mother, father, aunt, uncle, boarder, servant, etc. Race. Row 4, whether white, black, mulatto, quadroon, octoroon, Chinese, Japanese, or Indian. The Sagrario family is all listed as white. Mulatto, a person of mixed white and black ancestry. Quadroon, a person who is 1/4 black. Octoroon, a person who is 1/8 black. Hannah E. Kenner is listed on the second page of 713 in Washington, D.C., and she is listed as black. Gender, row 5, sex. Jose and Achilles are males. Marguerite, Mary, Mercedes are females. Age, row 6, age at nearest birthday. If under 1 year, give age in months. Jose is 45. Marguerite is 44. Mary is 22. Mercedes is 12. Achilles is 11. Here's Charles Evans and his family with their ages. The census taker wrote out the birth date of Charles Evans. He was born the 22nd of November, 1859. Ruth Dascom is 7 months old. She is found on the second page of 708 in Washington, D.C. From the top of page 708, we find the census was taken on the 11th of June. Subtracting 7 months means Ruth was likely born in December of 1889. Marriage. Row 7, whether single, married, widowed, or divorced. Jose and Marguerite are married. Mary and her siblings are single. Row 8, whether married during the census year, June 1st, 1889 to May 31st, 1890. William A. Whitney, page 733, and Evelyn C. Whitney were married between 1st of June, 1889 and 31st of May, 1890. Children. Row 9, mother of how many children and number of these children living. Marguerite has 6 children. 4 of those children are still living. Knowing that Marguerite had 2 children that have died will give us the clue to look for birth, christening, or death records for these 2 children that have died. In this image, we see that Anne Evans has had 10 children and 6 of them are living and listed on this census. This is a clue to look for those 4 deceased children. Birthplace. Row 10, place of birth. Jose is born in Spain. Marguerite in Italy. Mary in Spain. Mercedes born in France. Achilles was born in France. The Sicario family has immigrated to the United States. This is a clue to look for immigration and naturalization papers. Birthplace. The census taker recorded the city and state each person was born in the United States. Charles was born in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Anne was born in Hagerstown, Maryland. David was born in Baltimore, Maryland. Anne was born in Baltimore, Maryland. William was born in Washington, D.C. Birthplace. Row 11, place of birth of father. Row 12, place of birth of mother. Jose was born in Spain and his mother was born in Spain. Marguerite's father was born French, probably France, and the same for her mother. The census taker recorded the city and state each person was born in. Charles' parents were both born in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Anne's father was born in Washington, D.C. Her mother was born in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Immigration. Row 13, number of years in the United States. Row 14, whether naturalized. Row 15, whether naturalization papers have been taken out. Manuel Kaufman, found on page 483, has been in the United States for 36 years. He has turned in his naturalization papers and he has completed the naturalization process. Employment. Row 16, profession, trade, or occupation. Here are some occupations listed in the Washington, D.C. Census. Patent attorney. Clerk, U.S. Treasury. Lawyer. Clerk, Post Office Department. Clerk, War Department. Clerk, Agricultural Department. Here are a few more occupations listed in the Washington, D.C. Census. Clerk, Census Office. Botanist. Clerk, Third Audit Office, Treasury. Examine, Patent Office. Sash and binds merchant. Teacher, public. Here is my favorite one, a faithful wife. Row 17, months unemployed during the census year, June 1st, 1889 to May 31st, 1890. Charles Evans was employed. Education. Row 18, attendance at school in months during the census year, June 1st, 1889 to May 31st, 1890. Row 19, able to read. Row 20, able to write. In Evans' family, no one on the page was attending school and everyone could read and write. We see from row 16 that the youngest two children from the Evans family are listed as scholar public. They had attended the public school for 9 months and they could read and write. Language. Row 21, able to speak English, if not the language or dialect spoken. Everyone in Charles Evans' house speaks English. Jose and Mary spoke English. Marguerite spoke Spanish. Health. Row 22, whether suffering from acute or chronic disease, with name of disease and length of time afflicted. Row 23, whether defective in mind, sight, hearing, or speech, or whether crippled, maimed, or deformed, with name of defect. Edward C. Stewart on page 727 is listed as perfectly well and perfectly formed. Edwin Perkins on page 736 is listed as having paralysis of the right hand. William Alden on page 731 is listed with malaria bilhavirus. He has had this off and on since 1865. Emily J. Alden states hearing in one ear since childhood. At the bottom of the page it states what ear? Left. Whether a prisoner, convict, homeless, child, or pauper. Charles Evans and his family are typical in that the census taker wrote neither, none, or left this row empty. Home. Row 25, supplemental schedule and page. Supplemental questions were asked of some families, but not all. Row 26, is the home you live in hired, rented, or is it owned by the head or by a member of the family? Row 27, if owned by head or member of family, is the home free from mortgage encumbrance? On page 720, the McCleary family lived in a home owned by a family member. The home was not free from mortgage. Farm. Row 28. If the head of family is a farmer, is the farm which he cultivated hired, or is it owned by him or by a member of his family? Row 29. If owned by head or member of family, is the farm free from mortgage encumbrance? This is William Jackson from Mound McDonough, Illinois, page 837. He owned the farm with no mortgage. This is the Boozle family, also from Illinois, page 805. He owned the farm with a mortgage. Home. Row 30. If the home or farm is owned by head or member of family unmortgaged, give the post office address of owner. Page 720. The McCleary family lived in a home owned by John F. Drew. He lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 1890 Census Challenge. See if you can find the following. A person born in another country, a street address in the supplemental section, 5 different types of jobs listed, a person less than 1 year old. The end.